that I was going to catch up with you this week. I thought I would get your perspective on it. Does that too start with the mind?
Absolutely. I think what needs to be understood is that everyone is mentally deranged. And that isn't a derogatory statement.
Sure.
I genuinely mean it. Everyone has psychopathology. People that have it to just different degrees. There's no such thing as normal. Normal is just an agreed upon normal, according to the greatest prevalence in society. It's a biological democracy to some degree, So I don't think that there's something called normal and then there's mental health, because every human being suffers, not just mildly. Everyone suffers for their entire life. That's mental illness. It isn't mental illness that you shouldn't suffer. The reason it's mental illness is because the mind itself is an illness. The human being lives in a constant state of anxiety, varying degrees of so-called depression. All these things are just terms. They're just categorizations of common phenomenon into this and that.
Can't get dropped.
They're all derangements. They're all aberrations from the natural default, whether you call it anxiety or depression or whatever you want to call it. They're just names. Everyone is mentally disturbed in various ways.
What do you think makes it so difficult for people to talk about it?
No, I don't think there's a point of talking about it. The therapy doesn't do anything.
I get it. I totally.
So why talk? So then why talk about it? The only reason that you would talk about it is because talking about it would do something, and it doesn't. It may provide a temporary good feeling or whatever it may be, but it doesn't cure anything. Not even close.
I get it.
So what's the point? So
here's the point. Assuming again that you as a leader start to recognize some of these at least abnormal behaviors in some of the people that you work with or some of the people that you're closely connected with, do you feel it's a responsibility for a leader to bring that up?
No, there's no responsibility to do anything. You're responsible for yourself. You're not. I don't even like the word leader. What does that mean? It means maybe you're in a...
How about just the title?
You're in a leader, you're in a position of hierarchical power perhaps in a company, and therefore, you're the CEO or you're the whatever it may be.
Yes.
In any group, right? So you're the leader. Leaders are screwed up just like the janitor.
Of course.
So it doesn't... So why should if the janitor is mentally disturbed, and then the leader is mentally disturbed, why would you place more responsibility on one of the mentally disturbed for another one? It isn't just because he is at the top of the totem pole that he's this enlightened being, right? I mean, only an enlightened being, a person with true wisdom, who's not a leader, only an enlightened being, a person with true wisdom, that person has the ability to guide another. But a leader by position, a leader by the size of the chair, and I don't mean in a derogatory way. I mean a person who builds a company, a person who does, these are not small things. So I don't in any way, degrade that. I don't take that away from anyone because they're not small things. But that just demonstrates a level of proficiency in various talents of success and drive and motivation and building. That's great. But to place the onus upon someone for the mental health of someone else when everyone is suffering from top to bottom, it's overstating the idea of leader.
if you
They don't
were
want it.
in one of those
They don't
positions,
want it.
or
Right.
you were
Starts with one
coaching
place.
somebody in one of
Starts with
those
wanting it.
positions about ways to approach those issues within an organization.
Come on, kids, get up.
Wide type
Gotta come and take it.
What would you tell
I'm not
them?
leading out this whole race.
Obviously,
Let's go.
It all starts with you taking care of your own shit. But what's beyond that?
No, it doesn't start with that. It ends with that too.
Or is I got 50%?
I don't know. Like you say, you're bringing the dirty laundry again. And that's fine. That's fine. It's good that it's good for people to hear this. But the implication, once again, is this conditioned implication, this conditioned behavior
Fucking Americans.
to
Nobody wants to work.
teach people a bunch of stuff in the organization, right? It doesn't work. You know, when they have these motivational speakers come in and they give a lot of hee hee ha ha, a joke every 19 minutes. It's stupid, this juvenile, okay? I mean, it's silly that you can have a multi-billion-dollar company and we're wasting time and money treating human beings like they're kids in a pen and saying, look at this prop and look at this prop and let me tell you a nice story and all these stupid things. Human beings are not taught in mass environment. That doesn't work. The only thing that works is the only thing that has a potential to work. And the thing that has a potential to work is if a human being himself decides to come forward and he presents the desire and the longing to learn. You don't take people and put them in a pig pen and sprinkle a bunch of sugar on them. It is so juvenile that companies do this. It is just another example of how human beings have no earthly idea how the human mind works. They could save themselves billions of dollars by stopping all these nonsense and workshops and meditation rooms and kumbaya classes. I mean, it's nonsense because no one is serious. If you became serious, you would seriously examine what actually works and what doesn't. You'd be interested in that. But that isn't how human beings are. They just check boxes. They just fill the event calendar. And that's not respectable. And that's why I'm not moved by the idea of leader. Because most leaders, I don't think are worthy. That isn't a leader who brings in nonsense and has sprinkles a bunch of stuff on their people. That isn't a leader. A leader is interested in what is truly effective, what is surgical. That means something. Something that I can actually help someone.
But do you think that it would be effective if that person, call him her CEO, leader, evangelist, whatever you want to call him, becomes the person who really gives that permission to his or her people to seek that, their own self-expression and to seek their own, whatever it is their own truth is that?
No, I think he'll be laughed out of the building.
Because they don't know what the hell he's talking about?
Right, because he will be coming at it, he will be saying something that is so contrary to the norm that no one's going to understand him. You see, you can't teach human beings and condition them according to X, and then one day turn the tables and say Y, and think you're going to get it. You made it into X for 50 years. Why wouldn't, all they see is X. If it doesn't come in the language of X, they're not going to understand. They're not sitting there saying, I wish someone gave me Y. I'm not saying that. Everyone's a walking zombie. You get up in the morning, you go over here, you do this, you check the box over here, you go over here, you take a meeting, you talk nonsense, you go home, you watch some stupid TV show, say such and such to your wife or your kids, and they go up the next morning and you go do it again, right? And then you sprinkle some of these leadership conferences. It's not, once again, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, I'm not saying you should do it, I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. What I'm saying is that the human beings do not look for truth, and nor should they. I'm just making the statement that they don't, and because they don't,
Come on.
any discussion about what they do is a waste of time.
Do you think that their eagerness to seek validation and approval and to be liked by their boards, by their people, by the people they manage and lead, is that something that you think constantly gets in the way of them?
It gets in the way of everybody, right? Everyone is driven by ego and pleasure. But so what? What are you gonna do? You know? See, the reason I always say what is because there's nothing to teach here. Like, don't try to write anything down. So the reason I say what is, yes, everyone is driven by that, but so what? Because as if they have a choice, right? It's the very, very rare individual that comes forward and say, well, I'm very interested to really explore because I don't know any other way, and this is very, very intriguing to me. So when, like, if that happens, if like a possibility is born, but other than that, it's just chit chat. Yeah, do human beings waste their time? Yeah, but so what? Do human beings waste their lives? Yes, but so what? Do human beings have board meetings that go nowhere and waste their time? Yeah, but so what? Do human beings enjoy validation? Yeah, but so what are you gonna do? Say don't validate yourself? But it's all these things. It's all so what? The only time it's not so what is if a human being finds something inside him that is longing to devote himself to something. And you can't turn your next question into a hypothetical which says, well, what if I do find a human being who happens to, because it doesn't mean anything. Those people are very rare. And so you can't just ascribe that quality flippantly.
Well, that's why I know that you talk a lot about art, you talk about artists, right? And the world uses those terms very loosely nowadays. But to you, an artist is an artist like a Rembrandt, like a Picasso, who lives in their own little world and doesn't look at, or at that point, obviously, validation and approval wasn't part of what helped them.
Oh, but I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. I'm sure validation and approval were a part of most artists' life. But I think the bigger point here is that it doesn't matter what I view an artist as. Like, I don't own the monopoly on what an artist is. So what? That's what I think an artist is. It doesn't matter. I'm not recommending that someone become a true artist, right? So it doesn't matter what I think an artist is. A person is what he is, and he was that way before this podcast, and he's going to be that after this podcast. So the attempt to change someone is a waste of time. But you're right. That's how I do view an artist as someone who is pure and genuine and devoted to his art, and views his art as something that is an endeavor in which he wants to dissolve and take to the utmost heights. And is completely, almost violently against any garnering any applause or critical acclaim from critics. Like that is like, he views that as like petty and a waste of his time. So absolutely, but that doesn't mean anything. So what? I could do it any way that I want. It doesn't. A person who happens to be moved by that and shares that, okay. And a person who doesn't, okay. But it isn't, like, I never want the implication that because I view a true artist to be that way, that should in any way influence it. Because those things are not, that's not true. But nothing, it isn't about changing anyone. Things are the way they are, people are the way they are. The trying to get better stuff, that's just a waste.
Well, when it goes back to kind of some of the things we were talking about earlier with golf and practicing and the boys, where you talk about, hey, results are not going to come from practice, they're going to come from understanding the truth. And obviously not living in that time with the Rembrandts and the Picasso, it would seem like an observation that they skewed more towards the truth than I'm going to get up and start painting so I can practice to get better at it.
My honest answer to you with regard to that, the truthful answer to you would be this. How they end up doing things or not doing things is not my call. And I'm not being weird by giving, that's just the way it's going to be. They're going to view it the way they're going to view it. And I don't know. Just because I said something doesn't mean it's going to happen. I'm not the sergeant and the general, leading an army. And, these are free human beings. They can do whatever they want, right? I can just say, like, my limit to where my boundary is my immediate space. I can only say with truth that I view things that way. And it's not good or bad. Like, I didn't choose to do things that way, right? I just do. What someone else does, even though they grew up with me, I don't control that. So, yes, you're right. The influence may take root. The influence may not take root, right? I don't know.
What's interesting about talking to you, couple, is that you're not for everybody. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The things you think about and the way you speak really only applies to a very small set of people. This discussion is going to be unique in multiple ways, and one of those is that it's just not going to make sense for most people. It doesn't mean that you should try and have it make sense to you. It's not something to aspire to. It's not some graduate level course. It just doesn't have interest for most people. But again, it's not advanced. It's just different. Another way in which this differs is that I'm nervous to have this conversation. And normally I'm not that nervous about podcasts or conversations. In fact, I'm very confident about them. In this case, I'm a little nervous because all the questions that I want to ask you and all the things that I want to discuss with you are intensely personal. If I'm not genuinely interested in the answer, then I'm not really asking the proper question. I'm just showing up for the audience. I've been working with you, Kapo, for years now. I forget how long, actually. It's been quite a while. And I'm not proud of that. It's actually a failure, right? Because whatever I need to figure out, I should have figured out by now. Why do we still have to keep going over the same old ground? But the territory that you're walking, or the things that you're interested in, and your take on them is so unique that it takes time to even just understand the vocabulary and the grammar of how you speak and how you think and how you behave and how you view the world. There are a couple of keywords we can start with. I'm going to start with the hardest one. It's hard because it's the most unique. It's a word that you use over and over, and I don't think other people really understand what you're saying. Even I still barely understand what you're saying. I have some concept of it, but it's a mental shift that is so important that I think it's really important to understand and to examine carefully what you mean before we get into the rest. And that word is prescriptions. Let's talk about prescriptions.
Prescriptions are how-tos. They are hacks, and they are techniques and methods, various methodologies to get somewhere. When you talk about something from the standpoint of a mechanical behavior, turning on a computer, riding a bicycle, prescriptions are useful. The problem is that whenever you venture into the realm of art in any form, be it in business or sports or even in the setting of finding peace in your life or freedom or arriving at enlightenment or all of these so-called spiritual pursuits, those things cannot be prescription. If you attempt to prescriptionize them, what happens is the prescription becomes the new God. You begin to try to live up to the prescription. In the beginning, you had a place to go. You want to go to X. Then you introduce an intermediary, the prescription. This is how you get to X. Then what will happen is that your mind will begin to focus upon the intermediary, and it will enter into a deal which it never signed up for. That deal is that for the rest of your life, you will attempt to satisfy the intermediary. In all domains, you have many people who do great things. The Buddha attained enlightenment. You have Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods doing amazing things in golf, and Elon Musk and various individuals who do great things in business, and even yourself. If you take what those people did and write a book and said that these people did X, if you follow that, you will not become that. You will not.
I found business biographies to be useless for building a great business. They're good for inspiration. I can read Steve Jobs' bio and be inspired, but I can't be Steve Jobs. And if I want to be amazing at something, then I have to find my own way there. For mechanical things, how-tos work. But when you're trying to operate at the top of a field, or when you're trying to do something creative, how-tos don't work beyond the most extreme basics. When you're first starting something, it is actually a mechanical endeavor. You're just figuring out how to drive a car. But when you're trying to figure out how to race it around the track faster than anyone else, then all coaches and techniques and prescriptions have to fall by the wayside, and you are at the edge of the art.
That's correct. Now, the problem is conditioning. When there's only been one loudspeaker in a person's ear for his entire life, then that is his norm, and that is the only language that he knows. That paradigm of how-to is so embedded inside the culture. It is so deeply embedded inside the cortex of the human brain that the idea of omitting it, or the idea of even challenging its existence, is completely off the wall. It is so otherworldly and antithetical that it takes years to even get to the point where
we out here.
The idea of prescriptions being
3 laps to go. 108 in the lead.
To whatever you see
Bottle half full.
begins to dawn.
People consider you to be a spiritual guy on Twitter, and in my understanding, you're not like that at all. Spirituality is a pointless word. It's about utility. Is something useful? Does it get you where you want to go? You're always talking about extreme performance, and that's why your brand is Siddha Performance. It's seeking performance, essentially, and seeking the truth that gets you to the highest performance in all things,
all right, we're in.
whether it's business
Locked
or
in.
sports or
We hold this
peace
lead.
of mind.
We hold this lead.
Drive towards utility, reality,
I'm gonna get back one more second.
truth, performance.
I'm gonna get back one more second
There's some
until I'm across that line.
spirituality. People interpret them in spiritual ways, but it feels like
That's right.
spirituality is so
That's my
cluttered
gap right there.
nonsense that
That's
it
my
gets
gap.
lost. Your model makes
That's my
sense
W.
if one
That's
realizes
my pad.
that it's designed to go after extreme performance. If you want to be the best in the world at anything, you cannot follow prescription. If you want to be okay at it, sure, you can follow prescription. If you want to learn how to lose a pound a month and get in decent shape, then you can follow a calorie counting worksheet. But if you want to be a shredded bodybuilder or an Olympic athlete, you're not going to get there through how-tos. You're going to have to create and forge your own path that is unique to you. Would that be a good way of putting it?
Well, what I would add to that.
How you like that? How's that
one
table
does
for you?
not have to want to be
Every time, baby.
the greatest. in
Every
the world.
time.
If you look at the lives of human beings, there is intense struggle. The guy who worked 3 jobs doesn't want to work 3 jobs. He may not want to be
Who you like?
Tiger Woods, but he wants to be forced to work 3 jobs. What keeps him working 3 jobs is prescriptions. The utility of prescriptions does not just harm one who wants to become
Watch the heart rate.
It
Get the RPMs up. Let's
harms
go.
the one who simply doesn't want to struggle.
The way I think about it in the business world is that hard work has very little to do with effectiveness.
Come on,
The
dial.
grocery store owner or the person working at a restaurant
Dial.
might work 60, 80 hours a week, and that might be all Elon Musk is working. But Elon is making a lot more money because of his specific knowledge that cannot be taught, but can be learned on the job if you have a strong desire. Because Elon is doing the right things, he's far more effective in earning power, and the right things, at least in business, can't be taught because it's a moving target. You can only give very vague principles that inspire people to head in the right direction, but I can't teach you how to make money or trade the stock market. It's like when people ask for stock tips. No one who's any good at stock trading gives actionable investment advice in a public forum because all the details are too hard to convey. I can always tell people who ask for stock tips, they're not really serious about investing. People who ask for book recommendations aren't really serious about reading. People who ask, what business should I build, aren't really serious about entrepreneurship. People who say, what career path should I take, they're not really serious about their career. When someone's asking for a how-to in anything, they aren't actually that serious about it. If they were truly serious about it, they would figure it out. But then that leaves the paradoxical question, well, how do I figure it out?
Take the person who made it and became world class in whatever he did. If he went back and retraced his steps and did everything again the same way, but this time he did it by mimicking himself, he would fail. Even he wouldn't be able to do it. What has to be understood is that where greatness comes from, it's a very murky affair. It is non-linear. It is unpredictable. Perhaps nature and the universe set it up this way, that you have to jump in. And once you jump in the soup, and you're being bombarded,
come on, get up it,
dimension, and you have no idea which way is up. If the obsession is there, then what happens is through some messy process,
always
you find a way.
be
you see light at the end of the tunnel. You forge a path through the jungle. That was not done according to a how. You were flailing the entire time. So there was no how to flail. When you come out through the tunnel and someone asks you how you did it, you have no idea. The thing that's almost laughable is when you ask a great athlete, can you show me how you did that? They won't go on and say, I have no idea. They will provide you with some semblance of an answer, which is a non-answer. And what they will do is, because there's a gun pointed at their head and their back's against a wall, they will create the highlights. When the human being who watches that follows the highlights, he misses. And the reason that he misses is because it's all the small things.
I can't watch Roger Federer play tennis and swing the racket the same way, nor will any description from him on how to swing the racket get me to swing it the right way. Then we go to intellectual efforts. We start asking Warren Buffett why he invests in a company, and there he can try and create a mental construct as to how he thinks and how he invests in the company. But there are just as many details to Warren Buffett's activities when he decides what to invest in and how he lives his life and how he thinks, as there are to Roger Federer's body running around a tennis court hitting a ball. The details are not transmissible. They're not copyable. You could be inspired to try it yourself, but without that sincerity, that obsession, you won't get there.
That's our line.
Not only
It's all
are
about
the
decision
details
making.
not transmissible,
Okay,
the
good
details are
decisions.
unknowable.
Smart
So
decisions.
Warren and Roger don't even know it themselves.
Absolutely not. No great artist knows. The things that you do greatest are the things
Take it
that
away,
you
but
know
put it
not
back,
how
all
to
right?
do.
Take it away.
I would argue that
Put
you're
it right
not
back.
there when you do them. You're not consciously thinking about it. I find that when I'm speaking, I do best when I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say, and I don't even hear what I'm going to say until it comes out of my mouth.
You become as surprised as the audience as to what you're going to say. That is just pure. What is pure? Pure is not morality. Pure is not good. There's no good and bad. That's a whole other topic itself.
That's actually the next topic I want to get into. That's another set of assumptions that everybody has that to understand you have to be left by the wayside. What we're doing here is we're trying to focus on what is true. And that means we're going to speak as honestly as possible, which means we're going to be vulnerable, which means we're going to say things that are socially unacceptable, and we're going to say things that are potentially surprising. And it's very difficult to speak truth in a public forum. And why is that?
Come on, tune in.
Because
Zone
there's
in.
an internal dialogue.
You got one job to do right now.
The person wants the audience to understand.
There's definitely that. There's also a piece of it that society is a set of collective lies that we all
Can't let
believe
that happen
so
again,
we
all
get
right?
along. It allows us to
Dig in.
establish lowest common
Dial.
denominator consensus so we don't all kill each other and we can cooperate. But there are these shared fictions that we have to maintain for that society to function, which is fine. There's a cost to that, and the cost is borne by the individual.
It all comes back to DNA. Not genetic DNA. DNA in one sense of it is the way that he is wired. And some people's DNA, what society thinks, is almost an insult. If we don't discuss truth here, then what's the point of having a conversation? If there's any compulsion that the audience should understand, and it doesn't mean that I go out of my way to try to be arcane and abstract, but it isn't about anyone understanding. It's about speaking the truth.
Now that we've established that prescriptions don't work, and that we're here to discover the truth, and we're looking past good and bad and right or wrong, and we're just trying to figure out the answer, let's pick the first thing that we're going to dive into. Freedom. what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom is freedom from the mind. The only reason that any human being is not free is because of his mind. It is the mind which creates his tortures. It is the mind which creates his anxieties. It is the mind which creates his conflicts. It is the mind which creates his rules. All that he is confined by, all that he is imprisoned by, is the mind, not anything else.
When I was young, I wanted freedom, but I wanted freedom in the sense of I didn't want to be trapped in the house. I wanted to be able to live where I wanted. I wanted to be able to make money. I wanted to have a girlfriend. I wanted to go to a place where I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. That's what I wanted. In my mind, freedom was just getting away from physical constraints and material constraints. I got all that stuff. I traveled the whole world. I ate all the food. I made all the money. I got all the things that I wanted in life. Yet, the quality of my life did not change that much. The quality of my moment-to-moment experience didn't change that much. That's because I hadn't changed that much. My internal experience was still very much the same. Every time I got something, I wanted the next thing, and wanted the next thing, and wanted the next thing. All of the same pains and tortures and miseries were still there. Maybe some were better. Obviously, it's better to be rich than to be poor. It's better to be healthy than to be sick. But beyond a certain point, my baseline level of peace had not changed that much. Then I started making the transition to what you're talking about, realizing that a lot of these traps were in my mind. But you just jumped all the way. You're saying, no, it's all from the mind from the very beginning.
Yes, any freedom that leads to the desire for more freedom is not freedom. If there's a bleed, you don't clean the tributary vessels. You want to look at the source of the bleed. Even if it took someone 30 years to learn the source of the bleed, to learn the truth about what freedom really was, it would be far more effective to begin that journey at this very second, as opposed to doing it piecemeal, because that will take 900 years. It is not abstract to say that freedom comes from the mind. What it is revelatory. The belief is that anxiety and fears and pain arise from circumstance, that they arise from other people. As long as that belief is invested inside of someone, he will spend his life trying to change circumstance. And that would be a monumental waste of life, and you only get one. So quite frankly, there is no time to go piecemeal.
Okay?
It is
Bang your
far
head against the wall right now. Come on.
than it is to go piecemeal.
Get big.
Because then you're going down a tributary, and that tributary leads to other tributaries. Very soon you're way off course.
Take
What
some
we're really
used
talking about here is that all of the problems that we struggle with, we tend to externalize. We tend to solve them in the external world. And there are certain ones that are practical in the external world. Do I have food? Do I have shelter? Those kinds of things. But beyond a certain basic level, a lot of the problems we're trying to solve in the external world are actually internal problems. And even if we manage to solve the current manifestation in the external world, the new problem will just pop up tomorrow in the external world.
Everyone's looking for truth, whether they profess to look for truth or not. And the evidence for that is that everyone is looking for a way out for their problems. If they weren't, then there wouldn't be 14,000 prescriptions on every single corner from spirituality to self-help. The very fact that those things exist, and the very fact that they're populated by millions, means that there is an enormous appetite for relief from problems. And this relates back to prescriptions. No human being actually wants to be told what to do. There's something within a human being which rejects the idea of being told what to do. Quite frankly, even when you do give prescriptions, most don't follow it. And they will beg you for years to get the prescription. And when you give it, they won't do it. People look at that and say, see, you've been given the prescription and you followed. That's your fault. No, it's not. The fault is believing that that's what they really wanted. It's not. No one wants prescriptions. Freedom really is what everyone is looking for. It is just that they've been sold many lies. They've been sold many lies. That it's about meditating, and it's about practicing mindfulness, and it's about doing all these things. And none of those things are wrong. It's all about the question. If your question is, I'd like to feel better for 20 minutes a day, it gives me a sense of peace, what can I do? There's nothing wrong with it. If the question is, I really want to have peace in my life, I don't want to have problems every single day. My entire life is spent putting out fires. I don't want that anymore. It's a different question. and those prescriptions are being down for that.
So what is the most important question?
I would begin with the one that's most acute for a given individual. Now, broadly speaking, everyone's problem is problems. Anxiety, fear, concern, worry, conflict, confusion.
This persistent non-specific anxiety is probably the single most common human condition that most people are trying to get away from.
Yes.
And the naive version is, I have anxiety because I don't have enough money, so I need to go make more money. Then the slightly more sophisticated version is, boy, I wish I could just get over the anxiety of feeling like I don't have enough, because practically speaking, I have enough, but for some reason I'm still anxious. So I'd love to get rid of that anxiety. What's the next level after that?
It's a more fundamental one. The next level is zero. The idea that someone should get rid of anxiety is the problem. The problem is not how do I get rid of anxiety. The way is actually to learn where anxiety comes from. The people who have conquered anxiety are the ones who have a clear understanding of what it is and where it came from. The solution to a problem is never the solution. It's always the problem. The solution to any problem lies squarely deep within the problem. There are not two things, there's only one. Everyone is taught to look for solutions, and they believe that the solution is independent of the problem.
That's what it does.
But ingeniously,
do.
nature has hidden
That's
the
all it
problem
takes.
inside the solution, and maybe it did it because it wanted human beings to look inside the problem. The definition of the problem is the key.
Can we go through a
Got
specific
no
example?
keys.
Absolutely. So in the case of anxiety, a person asks, how do I get rid of anxiety? Their problem isn't that they have anxiety. The problem is that their anxiety will never end as long as they look for a solution to it. Well, if I don't find a solution, then I'm always going to have anxiety. That's correct. The solution is to go backwards, is to look what actually is this anxiety. Put a name on it. When does it arise? What part of your body does it arise in? In what situations does it arise?
From the haters.
Know the face of anxiety,
We're crazy.
not run from it like a boogeyman.
Is this something that's been solved on an individual basis?
There's no solving. It is simply the
Bitch, I'm a
understanding.
baby.
The solution
Got
to
no
any problem
keys.
lies diving
Stop,
deep into the
please.
problem. The answer
Don't
lies
leave.
in the anxiety.
Yes,
Every
indeed.
single thing that I say is
All
fraught
the
with
way.
error because
You're
the
supposed to hate.
prescription givers have
Got
hijacked
no
the English
keys.
language. They've already attached an
Stop,
image
please.
to every single word that I use.
Don't leave.
When I say that
yes,
you have to look into the anxiety,
indeed.
where that will go
Like yes,
is
indeed.
thanks to the spiritual jargon. What they'll say is, oh, I must face my anxiety. No.
That's right, get left
No, you
behind.
don't. Oh, that means that I must watch
Get
my
washed
thoughts.
out.
No, you don't. Why?
What's up?
Because if you do that, you'll be doing so prescriptively. You'll simply become an automaton who sits there and watches his thoughts. And then you will say, I've watched my thoughts, nothing changed. I went into the anxiety, I faced it, and nothing changed. The prescription is so subtle that any attempt to follow it removes you from the
So
solution.
we do what we are.
Even as you're
That's how
listening to
it's
my
done.
words, it isn't
Ain't no
about
problem.
finding out what I'm telling
Ain't
you
no
to
problem.
do. It is about
We ain't waiting around.
understanding.
We
And
ain't
through
waiting around.
understanding, you can take
far enough.
your destiny in your own hands. And even when I say that, I don't mean to motivate you by telling you that you
And who
can't
got the
take
sprint
your destiny
jersey?
in your own hands.
Mark
Forgive
that
me.
up.
1,000
And who got the
apologies. I have
sprint
no interest
jersey?
in motivating you.
That's right.
Because if I motivate you,
Write it down.
then you will get raw
Never
and say,
forget.
yes, I too will do that now, and you'll fail. It is about very quiet, very serious examination of what
Not my
actually
best.
is being said. Never
Not my
just
best.
listen to the words.
But better than the
send me
rest.
messages saying, well, what do you mean no prescriptions? You see, that's a prescription, don't follow prescriptions. It's not about prescriptions.
Not that I ever saw those
Go into the
losers.
source of why
Not
it
that
is
I
being
ever
said
saw those
for
losers.
yourself. It is never about the words. It's where they come from.
This is what makes these conversations so difficult. Even inspiring other people is hard because if they're inspired, inspiration doesn't last. It fades. It's like reading inspirational quotes or motivational posters. You spike up and then you crash back down. There are times where I've actually inspired people to go and start a business, and I regret it because if they're not inspired naturally, they're not going to be able to sustain it for a long period of time without me around.
Well, it isn't about them. I would say that the only real problem would not be whether their inspiration is sustained. The real problem would be if there's a desire to inspire them. That's the non-starter.
I desire my part to inspire them.
That's right. There is no other. That's another one. I can't say two words without it being a whole other thing.
But let's get into it. There is no other. I've said life is a single player game. You're just competing against yourself. that you're mostly arguing, having conflict with, admiring, looking at yourself. You're born alone, you die alone. How you interpret things is purely through you, how you view the world is purely through you. That's what I mean by it. Perhaps you mean something deeper than that.
There is no other means that there's no problem outside of yourself, and that all conflict is self-conflict. These things in which pain arises from a circumstance aren't really caused by the circumstance. The circumstance does not cause pain, it reveals it. If someone's intention is that I wanted to inspire him, that's a problem. If the intention is that I didn't care to inspire him or not, then that's not a problem. The problem